In November of 1983, on my 17th birthday, I was able to convince my mother to come with me down to the Army recruiter's office to sign a waiver so I could join the Army. 1 month after my 17th birthday, in December of 1983, I started my first day of basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. From there, I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia for AIT for 31 mic training. And then from there, I was sent to Fort Carson, Colorado. One of the highlights of being in Colorado Springs ended up being this place called DJ's Nightclub, where they had live bands, and I saw several there. So I was in Colorado Springs from June of 84 to November of 85. And I actually managed to save some ticket stubs and a couple of posters from that time that I'm about to show you guys. So with that, let me get the camera set up in a different position and we'll get started. So the first one, as you can see here, it was Kick Axe, with opening act was called Bastille, and that was from September 17th, 1984. And as you can see, if you bought it ahead of time, it was $4. And I believe that, I don't know exactly how many people this venue held, but I would be surprised if it was more than 200. I think it was probably less than that. But I had actually seen Kick Axe about a month and a half before this down in Pueblo when I first got to Colorado. They were opening for Judas Priest. I still have that ticket stub as well. I'll go ahead and put it into the frame. So that was from July 22nd, 1984, and it was at the Colorado State Fairgrounds. And as you can see, it was $13, so things were way cheaper back then. Now let's move on to the next one. Okay, the next one is Helix, with opening act Idle Threat. And that was October 13th, 1984. And that ticket was $5 for advance. And I didn't show you, but the back side of these tickets don't have anything on them. They're blank. But anyway, DJ's Nightclub was what they called a 3-2 club. And it was mainly for 18 to 21 years old, as you could get in there at age 18 and drink 3.2% beer. They didn't serve any hard liquor. You had to go to a regular bar where you had to be 21 to get liquor, or beer that was at about 5%, I think. But the 3-2 club was where the bands were, because because that's where the younger people are. But in addition to this ticket stub, I have another item related to this concert I'm going to show you. So as you can see, along with the ticket, I actually have it's an 11 by 17 poster for the event. And, it's just made out of paper. It's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the only one that exists in the world, because, who's going to have this? They didn't sell them. These were taped to the wall in the venue, and whenever I had the opportunity, if I would try to peel it off at the end of the show, and I managed to get a few. I only have been able to find 3. I believe there were a couple more at one time, but I'll only be able to show you 3 that I have in this As you can see, it's the same Helix show that we saw on the ticket. And so that's pretty cool. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, the next one's another good one, and it was easier for me to start with the poster, so that's what I've done. As you can see, it's the Mighty Grim Reaper. Opening act, Justin Morgan. This was from October 20th, 1984, and it was $4. And I remember at the show, they were actually flinging out cardboard 45s of, and I had one, but I don't know what happened to it over the years. This is over 40 years ago. So anyway, let's zoom in and we'll look a little bit closer at the ticket stub. Okay, so there's the closer view of the ticket stub. Ticket number 3. So that was the 3rd ticket sold. And again, I wonder how many people out there even have any ticket stubs, let alone posters from this venue. It's closed now. When I looked it up online, I think there's some kind of billiards and pool supply store there and sells pool tables and whatnot. Let's move on to the next one. There's 3 more. Okay, the next one's pretty awesome. This was Metallica and Armored Saint, March 4th, 1985, and it was $6. And this was for the Ride the Lightning tour for Metallica, and I think March of the Saint for Armored Saint. That's the only time I ever actually seen Metallica. I did manage to see Armored Saint another time a few years later in a totally different state down in Florida. I happen to have that ticket stub too, so I might as well show that while we're doing this video. So that one was at the Button South down in Florida, Hollandale, which is like near Fort Lauderdale, kind of. And it was $10, and that was from October 10th, 1991, and that was Armored Saint with Wrathchild of America, which they changed their name to something else. I think it was like Souls at Zero or something like that. But anyway, someone can correct me in the comments on that one. I know they changed their name to something. But so that was pretty cool, Metallica. And there was actually a poster for this. It existed. I had it for at least 20 years, and unfortunately, it got destroyed about 20 years ago, and it doesn't exist anymore. So that was unfortunate, but stuff happens. Okay, let's move on. We got 2 more. Okay, the next one, another great one. This is from the band Accept, and if you know them, they're a great band, has lots of albums out. They didn't seem to take off too much here in the States, but that was a pretty big name act to be at such a small venue. They were actually in town to open for Iron Maiden and also did a show there. And then the opening act was Rough Cutt. So for Accept, that was their Metal Heart album that they were touring for. And Rough Cutt, I don't remember the name of their album, but it was, I believe, their first album. And like I said, they were in town because they were going to be playing for Iron Maiden. I guess it was about a month and a half later. But I have that ticket stub as well, which was Iron Maiden at Red Rocks with Accept was the opening act. And that's an amazing place. If you've ever been there, you know, or if you've seen it, it's pretty awesome. I've been there when there was no concert. You can actually walk around on the stage. At least back then you could. It's a state park, more or less. But That was June 29th, 1985. $13.75 for Iron Maiden and Accept. And also to go along with the Accept, that at DJ's nightclub, we have the poster. So again, this is only 3 that I've been able to find. I have another poster from another event, not unrelated to DJs, and I have some other ticket stubs I found that aren't related to DJ's nightclub that I might end up making a separate video. It's kind of cool to look back at the ticket stubs from that era. Helps me remember stuff that was going on back then, and it's kind of neat to see what the prices were. We got one more ticket to show you, so let's move on. And so last but not least is John Kay and Steppenwolf from October 28th, 1985. And this was at $7 a ticket. And they had Bastille open for them, and they were actually an opening act for Kick-Axe on the ticket stubs that we've shown here. So they were a local staple. I think I've even seen them there on nights when they didn't have tickets. Another notable act that I saw at that club that there was no ticket, pretty sure they were from Colorado Springs, and they're still out there touring today, is Jag Panzer. And that was their pretty much first album launch as well, I believe. Yeah. So anyway, if any of you heard of DJ's nightclub and got some interesting stories about it, or if you even have any of this memorabilia, I would not be surprised if everything I've shown you is one of a kind, that and no one else has any of it. I would be very surprised if they did. So anyway, thanks for watching.